So I didn't realize this, and maybe you were doing this, but he was actually using the budgeting tab before he sold the job, like to try to
Hmm.
anticipate like what his profit would be on a job, which is interesting. I mean, I'd always thought that you just put that into your quote and then that would be that. But I do. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this. And he wasn't explicitly asking for this, but he was just like, hey, I kind of want an area that I can sort of workshop the project before we actually start spending money, like rather than waiting to the very end of the job. Because it's the sum of payments in that budget tab, like it truly, you have to wait to the end. You have to wait till you actually collect payments to see how that budget breaks down. So, kind of what him and I were talking back and forth about is like, what if we added at least one, like split it into multiple tabs and added at least one more tab where you have the post job budget that's the sum of payments and breaks down some of actual revenue, and then having a pre job tab where it's the same budget, right? But it's different, it's separate. So you have a different number at the top, and you have more of like a place where you can sort of plan out budget wise before the job takes place, and then you can compare the two. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think
Yeah,
that's
I use it the same way as Brian
okay?
did. Like, so I use that pre-job budget. It's really important. It's even more. I mean, most people use subcontractors, so you have a pretty fixed labor uh, budget. You
On it.
understand what labor is going to cost. But anywhere out west, Oregon, Washington, California, they have to plan man hours. It's just more complicated, and you can't really just have a solid number in the labor category. You have to try to plan this to sell these jobs because you're having hourly labor and a number of man hours. It's just more complicated. You need that pre-job budget area to plan, to really double check your estimate to make sure that it's
It's gonna make
going to
sense
be,
for the business.
yeah, going to make sense for the profitability of the business.
Yeah. This is one thing I was worried. I was a little worried when it has to be the way it is, in that one budget area with the payments, because there just has to be a place where that sort of goes in automatically. But um, it does need to be, I think we need to add, and that's actually not a hard add. I might be able to even knock that out. That's the thing. That's like what we're talking about is like, if we were a funded startup where we had this team over in India, or
Let's
maybe even
email
it's
the
US
team.
based, it's
It
like,
doesn't even
let's
matter.
email the team.
Yep.
Then the product manager has to create the scope and plan, and then it gets put in the next sprint. And like, but by the time it actually gets done and finished and deployed, we're just 2 to 3 months down the road. With us, it's like, I'm like, yeah, this is a good idea. I think it makes sense. I'm going to work on it tonight. I might have it done tomorrow,
You
or,
just heard that in
worst
real
case
time,
scenario,
folks.
Monday. Yeah. Well, there is the roofing process conference that will slow things down, but like, I very well might be able to knock that out tonight. It just, once I have to get in there, it's not that hard because I can duplicate essentially the code that's for the budget, duplicate it over, make it like it used to be, so it's fully editable. So I don't anticipate that being a hard add, but it could potentially make a really big impact on Brian's business, on your business, on our other customers' business that do need to have that pre-job versus post-job budget, and be able to look at both. So
Yep.
yeah,
Also, the variance. We want to know the variance between the pre and post job budget.
yeah, that makes sense. Is that something that should be tracked in like reports, like actually
Yep.
have
Hmm.
a variance?
Yeah, we
But
want to
how is that
know
like
how
a variance? How does
you'll just
that track?
you'll just know the difference between what you planned and what actually happened.
Yeah,
It'll be a positive or negative quantity. Usually for us, in good situations, we plan to have a certain amount, specifically material, and we have a return. So we have a lower budget for our material, so there's a higher profit margin generally.
gotcha. So
That's it.
yeah, actually that could be probably added to the post-job budget page as just a line item at the bottom, like variance.
Sure.
Um, yeah, that's a good idea. Should on the pre-job budget, so we have numbers now that are automatically being calculated for quoted, um, and quoted and signed revenue from quotes.
Mhm.
Should the pre-job budget be one of those numbers, or should it be free form where you can just type in the number and kind of play around with it?
You definitely want to be able to freeform that
Okay.
probably.
So the,
Um,
the post-job budget is limited to payments. So like you
yeah,
have to
that should
put,
be
and
that's accurate to
that
the
has to be
to the
accurate
penny.
to, yeah, what payments have been recorded, even if they're manually added payments. And then The pre-job budget though, you just put in like revenue.
Yep.
And yeah, that makes sense. And it's not not a hard ad. So yeah, cool. Um, yeah, I love this is a little window into like this is what we do all the time. It's just like, hey, like how is the product working? Like this is what this customer said. You know, John, how does this work in your business? And like we just workshop it and we figure out what's going to work best, and then we get it done. And that's just I it just the conversations that are happening in these well-funded startups are not this. Like this is not what's happening. Like those conversations, those founders, they are worried about raising their next round of funding first and foremost. Like this is it's a different way of thinking, a different way of approaching business, and it is designed to serve the investors, not the customer. Nothing wrong, and like that's capitalism. Like you have to have that at some point. At some point, Proline, like we might exit or partially exit Proline, you know, years down the line, right? After the product is where it needs to be, right? So it's like things, you know, that does happen. The problem is when it starts happening really early in a business before, you know, the business is established, the product is laid down properly. Like that's where it starts it just destroys businesses. Typically destroys businesses.
It's true, but the end customer always chooses, and it's because of there's a software term stickiness of CRMs, because it's your platform and it's so painful to switch CRMs. Some other CRMs specifically get to stay around because either there's no other really there's not a really big difference between kind of the 5 major CRMs that we're seeing in the roofing space. And it's really painful to switch. So they're able to get away with it, essentially having an inferior product, or a product doesn't really help you, that you're paying for hundreds or thousands of dollars a month to have.
Yeah.
So there's like, you know, once they get again, same kind of deal. People that raise money, they get you stuck in there. That's why investors want to invest in these types of softwares, because they know people typically don't leave because it's their whole business platform.
Yeah. So it's that they're going to spend a ton of money on marketing, get you in the door, and with an inferior product because the investors don't want to invest in the product, and then you're stuck unless you want to go through that painful process. So yeah, it's I mean, I honestly wish the best for all of these other unnamed software companies out here raising lots of money, and CRM platforms raising lots of money and selling roofers. I wish them best, because I don't want those products to fail and those roofers to get screwed. I don't. But I've seen this not just in the roofing, not in the roofing space, but across all of like tech startup world, which is I'm very familiar with. And it's this cycle that repeats itself over and over and over again. And my fear is that this is happening in the roofing space. And I mean, I think it is already happening. Some of the older startups that have raised private equity and stuff, but I am afraid the cycle is repeating itself inside of this industry. So
hot take, John's hot take. Clip this. Both software companies and roofing roll-ups, they may do well for some people in certain perspectives, right? It's going to be the co-founders of companies, the founders of companies. It's going to be the owners of these roofing companies